Okay. This is how you do planning for a practical. Okay, so this is a template for your planning. So when you read the question, first thing you need to identify is this thing called the independent variable. Okay, independent variable. Then you identify the dependent variable. After you identify these two, you also need to determine what is the constants. Okay, the constant, or the other one is, the other name is called controlled variable. Okay, usually you can see this from the question itself. Okay, so the most important thing in your planning is to be able to identify the independent and dependent. Okay, because the moment you are wrong for these two, you don't need to talk about the rest. Your marks will just be gone. Okay, so this one you have to be very, very careful to identify which is the independent, which is the dependent. Okay, generally the independent is the variable that when you change it or vary it, it will cause changes in the dependent variable. Okay, this depends on this. Okay, so after you have identified your independent and dependent variable and your control variable, it's time to then describe your experimental procedure. Okay, so in the experimental procedure, you have 3 questions to answer. Number 1, how to measure your independent variable. Number 2, how to measure your dependent variable. And number 3, how to now vary the independent variable. Okay, the reason why we need to vary the independent variable is to make sure that we have enough data to then plot a graph to achieve what we want for the experiment. Okay, although this is for planning, it's actually what all experiments want to do. Okay, just that for this case, because you are planning, if it's a bit like tough or a bit hard to do, it doesn't matter because all you do is just planning. Okay, nobody's going to do this experiment. So after you describe your procedure, usually they will ask you what graph you need to plot. Okay, so when you plot your graph, make sure you know, you write plot what versus what. This thing is always a dependent variable and this thing is the independent variable. Okay? But before you write this, sometimes you may need to show how you get the graph. Okay, that's by maths, by linear law. Okay, this one is by linear law. That is from your maths. Okay, so finally, they will also sometimes ask you an explanation of how one of the variables can be determined from the graph. Okay, so after you have the graph, you state what is the gradient, what is the y-intercept. Okay, and then after that, any values that they want, how you can get it from the graph. Okay, this will be explained in the examples.